from Henry Cavill's irreplaceable performance as Geralt of Rivia, to many fans saying they'll stop watching the show after his final season. Here's why Liam Hemsworth will ruin The Witcher. First things first, Cavill gave the fans an iconic portrayal of the monster hunter, and most Witcher diehards think he's the only man for the job. You've got to understand, he had a ton of momentum going into The Witcher, with roles like Superman in the DCEU bringing him global acclaim. He's also appeared in a bunch of other successful projects such as Mission Impossible Fallout and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It's safe to say that The Witcher owes a huge debt to its former star. Sure, its grittier take on the fantasy genre was bound to give it some viewers, but can you imagine how many people tuned in just because they wanted to see Henry? Even if we ignore his A-list status, Henry pulled off an acting masterclass as Geralt, bringing everything you'd expect from a magically enhanced super soldier. Honestly, he wasn't even treated like a celebrity when he was vying for the role. Traditionally, stars of his stature don't have to go for auditions since their fame speaks for itself. There are plenty of roles that can prove Henry's acting chops. Even so, when Henry started pursuing the part, the showrunner said he'd have to audition for the part. That didn't stop Cavill, though, and he decided to go through with the audition. You have to admit, it worked out well for the minds behind the show, because Cavill's basically made for the role, and he certainly didn't waste any time settling into it. From the very first season, Cavill perfectly captured The Witcher's gray moral code, and he never compromised on the character's complexity. But you might be wondering why Henry would go through so much trouble for a part, especially given his established presence in the movie business. Well, it's because he's a huge fan of Andrzej Sapkowski's novels, along with the wildly popular video games that made Geralt of Rivia a household name. Just like with Superman, Henry wasn't just looking for a quick paycheck with the role. He wanted to honor a character that he'd loved for years. In fact, he was such a fanboy that he played The Witcher 3 game for 100 hours to prepare and signed on for 7 seasons at the start. On top of that, Henry's been outspoken about keeping the show true to the source material. Did anyone notice how talkative Geralt became in Season 2? He barely got a word in during the first season, usually communicating with grunts and gestures, though Henry did convey a lot of emotion just with his eyes and facial expressions. I guess that's accurate, technically speaking, because Geralt doesn't talk much in the books. However, we still get to hear his voice through the first-person narrative. Henry wanted to figure out how to depict that on screen, so he urged the writers to give him more lines. You see, Geralt's actually very well-spoken, it's just that he keeps his thoughts to himself most of the time. But in a visual medium like a TV show, you need to bring some of that internal commentary out. Unfortunately, Cavill's loyalty to the novels ended up being his greatest weakness, because the show's creative team just didn't agree with his view. Apparently, some of the show's writers straight up hated the source material. Don't just take it from me. This comes straight from one of the writers and producers, Beau DeMayo. According to him, his fellow wordsmiths weren't huge Sapkowski fans. To be fair, showrunner Lauren Hissrich claimed she loved the novels before the show came out, but something tells me she wasn't telling the truth. After all, Henry only had one condition when he made a 7-season commitment. He didn't want to deviate from the lore too much. Considering he's leaving the show after the 3rd season, it wouldn't surprise me if this was the reason behind his exit. Sure, Henry hasn't actually confirmed this, but why else would he leave a show he was so passionate about? Either way, The Witcher's 3rd season will be his last outing as Geralt of Rivia, with Liam Hemsworth set to replace him in the 3rd season. And let me tell you, the fans are not happy about this. Liam doesn't come close to Henry's acting skills. It's not like he's done anything impressive in the past. His sole claim to fame is his minor role in the Hunger Games, unless you count that horrible Independence Day sequel he led. Honestly, most people only know his name because of his famous older brother, although his relationship with Miley Cyrus kept him in the tabloids for a while too. I'd have been okay with Henry getting replaced if they found a halfway decent actor to fill his shoes, but come on, do they really think Liam can pull off all of Geralt's subtle expressions? Can he match Henry's pitch-perfect line delivery? Had he even heard of The Witcher before the show came out? The worst part about this is that we're losing a fan in the lead role, which means that future seasons will keep straying further away from Sapkowski's brilliant work. But let's ignore Henry's geekdom for a second. He's also been vocal about listening to other fans, since he believes that backlash and criticism can help make the show better. Liam seems like the kind of actor who'd shut up and do as he's told, which might be exactly why he got the part. Oh, and did I mention he looks nothing like Henry? It'll be a pretty jarring change since Henry basically embodies Geralt of Rivia. Granted, Liam has the body for the role, but there's not much else that makes him a good fit. The weak chin and soft features are worlds apart from Cavill, which could create some noticeable continuity issues down the line. Are we supposed to just ignore the fact that Geralt's suddenly 10 years younger? There's only so much disbelief an audience can suspend. Unless Liam somehow transforms into Henry before filming the 4th season, most fans will have a hard time accepting his new portrayal. Let's say he does the impossible and changes his appearance. That still won't compensate for his glaring lack of acting talent. Maybe Hissrick will hire him an acting coach? If they're going to go through this much trouble, couldn't they have just hired someone who could already act? The fans have offered plenty of better candidates. I've got to say, Mads Mikkelsen is the best suggestion of all. His performance as Hannibal Lecter earned him widespread acclaim, and some even said that he equaled the great Anthony Hopkins' performance. Mind you, this isn't the first time he's been connected with the role. Fans have been calling for his casting for years now, even before Henry got the part. With Cavill now out, the stage is set for Mikkelsen to take up the mantle. Rather, it would have been if the showrunner had one lick of good sense. Fans have gone so far as to start petitions to convince them to replace Liam with Mads. I get where they're coming from. Mikkelsen is one of the most respected actors in the world. He also clearly has what it takes to capture the brutal physicality of a monster hunter. And his face naturally makes you want to cross the street if you see him coming towards you. That is what we need in a Witcher. Someone intimidating. Someone who can steal every scene he's in. If he was able to match Anthony Hopkins, of all people, I don't see why he'd have trouble with Henry Cavill. It also helps that he's the right age for the part. I'd imagine he'd follow Henry's tradition of holding the writers accountable for any unnecessary creative liberties. All of this is just wishful thinking, though. The showrunner made her decision, so we won't have Henry's one-of-a-kind portrayal anymore. Nor will we get the pleasure of seeing a talented actor take the show forward. Unsurprisingly, most fans have admitted they might stop watching the show after Henry leaves. What's the point of watching a show that won't respect Sapkowski's narrative? Henry's desire for book accuracy kept many Witcher fans happy, and his Superman role brought countless more viewers to the table. That made it easier for fans to accept the plot changes and confusing storylines. And they knew that Henry would come out to bat for them if they had any major concerns. Now that he's gone, The Witcher's future is starting to look very bleak because the showrunner hasn't left much for audiences to stick around for. So there you have it. From fans saying they'll boycott the show after season 3 to the way Henry Cavill won the fans over with his dedication to the role. That's why Liam Hemsworth will ruin The Witcher.